Hello and welcome to Next 2.0 on WQLN NPR. Next is produced by the Public's Voice Media. I'm your host, Marcus Atkinson, with guest host Chuck Camerata. If you want to know more about Next 2.0, you can go to Facebook and like the page. You can also follow us on Instagram at Next 2.0 Erie. There you can keep up with upcoming show promos, events, and clips about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we have two very special guests. One, we have Anna McCartney. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Krista Perry. Krista, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And you may have heard those names before. They have been in the newspaper and on the news on multiple occasions for their benevolent protest of this local lease, with the lease of Gannon University, of the local library. The lease has been a cause of controversy for a number of people because of not just the terms, the fact that whether or not it's even moral to do so. There's been a lot of controversy in the past with the library under this new county executive. We've had issues with books and the culture of the library and not being as inclusive as it should be. It seems that it has been one thing after the next. But certainly this library situation has sparked a debate that is not going anywhere anytime soon. I know that some would like it to, but it doesn't seem to be going that direction. And so today, these good ladies join Chuck and myself so that we can talk about their backgrounds, the protests, the kind of the meat on the bones where the situation is concerned. The latest article from Kathy Dahlkemper, which I think really puts forth some thought-provoking thoughts. And hopefully the county executive and his administration are looking at that article and doing some introspection. Many have their doubts, but one would hope. So
I have my doubts.
Me too.
Yes.
And so I say to everyone, welcome to the show. All right. And so let's start with the background, the protest, and I'll start with you. How did you get involved with this? And just talk about the genesis of this protest, the work you've done leading up to it, how it landed on your radar. And then, Krista, feel free to just go ahead and chime in.
Sure. Well, I think that there was an article in the paper, in the Erie Times News, I believe it was on October 13th, where it talked about the meeting that was coming up. And that was the first, I think, the public really found out about the fact that they were going to vote on this issue, whether or not they would approve the lease.
So this issue is that Gannon is developing, Gannon has a program.
Right.
And they're looking for space for that program.
Correct. They had a space.
But that fell through for whatever reason. And now, and our county commissioner, or county chairperson, offered them the library.
Correct. He
Mrs.
offered
Gannon's Great Lakes Research and Education Center.
Which is a great program, it looks like.
Yes.
But that's
none
not
of
the
us,
point here.
Right. None of us, and again, let's make that really clear. None of us from the beginning have been against that program.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an environmentalist. I used to write newspaper pages in the Erie Times News once a week about the environment. We did outreach. And so I know the environment, and I am passionate about the environment. But a lab does not belong in our public library, and Gannon does not belong in that space in our public library. It's it just makes me crazy to think that they can just walk in there and build something that's a lab, and then they say it's going to benefit all the public and it's going to be an addition to the library, and we should be really happy about it. Well, we're not.
No,
We're very unhappy.
No, we are not.
And so this landed on your radar. Did you start to organize these efforts?
Well, Doris Zapola and I happened to go to the county council meeting on October 17th where they were discussing it, and there were many people there. There was people in the hallway, a lot of people objecting. They didn't listen to a word we said. 5 of the people voted to pass the lease. And so we were like, wait, that can't be. This is like, what kind of democracy are we living in? And so she and I immediately started talking, and we got to get a petition. We got to tell people what's going on.
Right.
And so that's how we started the petition. It was in paper, and we decided that took too long and it's hard to reach people. So then I created the petition on change.org/wrong location so that we could get more people knowledge, pass out the knowledge to them and get them to sign.
Mm-hmm. Krista, where do you come in on all of this?
Well, I had been following the petition. I've been following the protest and following the articles that came out and what was going on with this lease. And I personally instantly became concerned as well. And again, We think it is a worthwhile project. I'm an educator. I work with children. I can see the benefits of it. However, it does not belong in a public library. The public library is the people's house.
Right.
It belongs to the residents, to the taxpayers, to the citizens of this county. And we want to make sure we preserve this for the future generations, for programs that benefit every single member of this county and of this city to enjoy. So when I saw that this was going on, I decided to also attend a meeting. And the meeting also, to speak up, was also, it almost seemed retaliatory when there were significant cuts to staffing that were going to be happening at the library. And I love my library staff. I love them
It's a great
deeply.
staff.
They are a great staff, and I just felt like I wanted to speak up for them as well. And I attended a meeting in December that I had an opportunity to speak. But that meeting also was a place where the county government was actively trying to silence the people on talking about our library.
Yeah, when it comes to the public library, it's a space that I know my family and myself have taken full advantage of over the years. The purpose of the public library, I think, is one of the better parts of government, in our city.
Absolutely.
You see all of our homeless brothers and sisters that this may be their opportunity to access the World Wide Web for multiple reasons, whether that is recreationally, to find a job, to do research. That's their personal business, but it gives them that space. My 30 plus years of youth development, I've recalled taking students there for petting and reading to these, not the guide dogs, but the
therapy
the
dogs?
therapy dogs, right?
Yes,
We've
yes.
done that. We've had groups with the teen center down there. We've had, different events that we've hosted there for community. And so in just this space, we've taken full advantage of it, and that's what it's there for.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people have watched on the sideline all of the different controversies that have been coming up where the library is concerned. And it is concerning,
Yes.
right? It does make you kind of pause and say, wait a minute, where are we going with this? Because it's one of the few places that the public can call its own and really
absolutely.
utilize.
One of the things that's hard, there's so many issues tangled with this. And so as I was thinking about today's program, I was thinking about how to untangle these issues. And I asked Anna just before we went on the air that what are the issues for you? And we didn't get to talk all the way through that, but one of them is the incredible lack of transparency. And that's not just with this issue, that's an issue with Brendan Davis across the board. We've seen what happened in Fairview and Girard about the industrial park, and it just kind of goes on. And that gives you concerns about the motives behind this particular action. But another one of the issues is the lease itself.
Yes.
It's a ridiculous lease.
It is.
Very ridiculous.
It's charging Gannon $7 per
Yeah.
square foot for office space, essentially.
Plus, they also get use of all the other spaces.
Exactly.
That's not even included.
For nothing.
That's right,
And
not included.
that $7 is half or even less
That's a
than
third
half
of what they're paying for
exactly.
the space at,
Right.
at the intermodal.
Which is
So-
where the article goes in.
Right.
Exactly right.
know?
And not only that, but it's a 25-year lease with no
I know.
options to raise.
Exactly.
It's just really crazy.
Right. It's like we're giving the Diocese of Erie, which owns Gannon, we're giving them around almost $240,000 a year in a donation, because if they paid what the going rate was,
Exactly.
they would be paying much more than $22,000.
And that's why I wanted to bring you in, Chuck, because I want to talk about Kathy Dahlkemper, former county executive. She gave you kudos for protesting outside of, Gannon's.
We've been there. We're on our 17th week.
Right. So she gave you kudos for it. Bishop Persico, not so much. He's kind of scratching and saying, like, well, why would you come here?
Yes.
And Chuck, with you being in ministry, so you made an excellent point, Anna. This is essentially the citizens giving a donation to the who the majority of which probably aren't even Catholic, first of all.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
But the fact that they're protesting on in front of the Catholic Church, speak to that a little bit, because Bishop Persico is coming off like, I don't understand why you would do that. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
Well, it's pretty hard not to understand. I think
Right.
I think you have to try not to understand why they're doing it. That just all seems to me to be game playing.
They're being deliberately obtuse.
Yes, you
love
must
that.
go to the library.
Yes, I
Where's Krista? She's at the library looking up new words. Don't interrupt the
do. That's
process.
right.
Obtuse is such a good word,
It
though. It's
is.
exactly right here.
Yeah.
If you don't want to deal with something, you pretend you don't understand. That's what's going on there.
Yeah.
There is this. This is. I struggle with the church in general today.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
whirling it to you.
You and I have been talking about that for a long time, but this is a perfect opportunity for the church in Erie, Pennsylvania to say, we want to think about the bigger impact of this.
Yes.
We want to think about the nature of our interaction with the community and what's best for the Erie community instead of, oh man, we're getting a great deal here.
That's
We're going to do this
exactly.
for ourselves.
Yes.
And yes, there's probably going to be benefits to the community from the program, but not to, it could be much more beneficial to the community. And it's going to be beneficial wherever they go. That library space is important space for future growth.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that Kathy
exactly.
Dahlkemper made
Yes.
really clear in her article.
Exactly.
So I think it's a moral issue that the church is turning a blind eye to,
Very much
which is
so.
what we do
And
so often today.
they're being critical of us. Meanwhile, if anybody should be critical, it is us of them, because first of all, he said, he and Brenton Davis both on the same page said it's just a small group of disgruntled people. I forget
Right.
exactly their terminology.
Very
but-
dismissive.
Yeah, very dismissive. And just so everybody knows, our numbers keep going up. We're about 4,300 signatures between the online and the hard copies. So that's a lot more than just
Exactly.
a few people. So, but yeah, so how he responded to us was just like, I just wanted to pull my hair out when I read his piece.
Well, my son came to me. Now, he's 18. He's a senior at collegiate. And he said, Mom, did you see the petition about the library? Did you sign it? Because he and his friends have now started to share the petition amongst themselves
That's
on
great.
their social medias. Feeds and such. So it is making its round to Gen Z too, who also see this as something
Yeah.
that they don't want to happen to their public library either.
Yeah.
Right. And I threw that to Chuck because, well, first of all, let's just say it was just a small group of people. Does that make it any less valid? That's a ridiculous argument,
Yeah.
especially if you are talking to people from the church. Chuck and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
You go back through the history of the church trying to do what's right for everyday people. They've always been in the minority during pivotal times in
Absolutely.
history.
Yeah.
And so you would think one would say, okay, we're used to being on that side of history, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we talk all the time about religious institutions representing the voices of the marginalized, representing the voice of the downtrodden, the voice of the voiceless, and the voice of those that are going without. And so when I think about Kathy Dahlkemper's statement of just because it's a great deal doesn't make it right.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was perfectly said.
Right, and so you think about that. I want to segue to something that Dr. Iwanenko said, because I actually sat down with him not too long ago, full disclosure, and we talked about this. It wasn't on this, but we did get a chance to debrief a bit about this. I know that he has had, I don't know if it's been one or more conversations with groups. Talk
Yes,
about how
it-
that has played out, because he makes it a point to say, hey, listen, we're inviting these people to have conversation because we want to make sure.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, because the thing that makes me crazy about that is that he meets with small groups of just certain people, but they have not had a public meeting from the beginning. It was something that they talked about in one of the emails that I looked at, but then somehow the public meeting went by the wayside. And so I think he thinks by meeting with these small groups, they can say they met with the public.
Yeah.
And the groups that have met with him will tell you that they ask questions he doesn't really answer, and then he comes back with, but this is a great program, and it's going to be wonderful for the community. And so public meeting we have not had, and it should be a big public meeting where it's in the paper, where it's advertised
Yes.
on the news and
Yes.
advertised so
And
that
then
people.
they won't be able to say it's just a small group of people.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Right.
That's
And
right.
that's why
And
they don't
so
want to do
that's
something
why
like
they don't
that.
want to do a big group, because I
Right.
think they've seen from we've been to now 3 county council meetings. We went to the one in October, November, December, when people got thrown out and couldn't express their opinion. they were escorted out
They were
by the
escorted
sheriffs.
out by deputy sheriffs.
Yes, they were.
And so, yeah. So
One on either side of them
Yes.
came up and took them away from the podium.
And then we also went to the one in January when the new council is there. They were recognizing the new council members. And so we have and that was one of the other things that Bishop Persico said is they need to talk to county council and county government. We've been trying
to. They
for
won't
months.
listen to us. They silence us.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few now.
There
now
are a
we
few.
have a few new members who are listening, but we still don't have the majority that could override a veto.
Well, that was the point that I was going to make. I think it is Gannon's position of the county should be calling this public meeting.
Right,
It
and
isn't
that's
on us.
exactly, and so that's what but we've been trying, and so they still have the moral responsibility because they went into this knowing that the public was not involved, and so they morally are responsible to say, maybe we shouldn't be doing business with Brenton Davis because we're subverting democracy. We're helping Brenton Davis keep the people out of the decisions in their public library. And so that's morally corrupt. And, we just can't believe that they're doing that. We keep trying to give them an out.
Absolutely. I wrote a letter to the editor answering Bishop Persico's question on why these people are coming to Gannon and
To the churches.
to the churches to protest. And I specifically answered him. First of all, county government is not listening to us. They have been trying to silence us. They haven't provided a public meeting for us. But I have not been reached out to by Gannon. They have not read. I was published in the paper specifically answering and speaking directly to Gannon, and not a single person from the university or from the Catholic Diocese has reached out to me to answer my questions. I posed questions in that letter to the editor.
So for me, I would say to the powers that be, Persico and the folks who are at Gannon leading the university, as leaders of a church institution, you have more obligation than does a secular institution.
Correct.
Interesting point.
And
Yes.
so let's take seriously the concerns of the community rather than just run roughshod over those concerns. And even if it is just a small group of people, why not listen to them rather than just wash your hands of things, which is the nature of how church institutions do business today.
Let's talk about that 5-2 vote, and then we'll segue into this article from Kathy Dahlkemper. I mean, obviously, Andre Horton and Terry Scatella voted against this at the time, and then obviously this has been restructured and recalibrated, and it looks like there's at least 4 votes there to say, let's rescind this thing.
Yeah.
But when you look at the actual lease, again, you pointed it out, Chuck, with this 3,000 square foot parcel or piece of the facility, $7 a square foot, and they can't break the lease within the first 10 years. That is a huge giveaway. When she breaks out this article, the 2 things that I found most fascinating, because I am basing these comments on what we hear the county executive say repeatedly. We're listening to him say it right now about ECRA and the Erie County Gaming Revenue Authority, and it's all about how do we spend taxpayer dollars, and is this responsible? Is this honor the taxpayer? Good question. And so when she pointed out the fact that the county has numerous leases for office space, averaging approximately $15 per square foot at the cost of the taxpayers. An example that was given was the Veterans Affairs office, now located right across the street in the Intermodal Center across from Holland. They're paying over $20 per square foot for that space. And so it begs the question, why not just pull those operations into the public library for that matter?
If we have space.
Yes,
we have the space.
Unused space.
Right.
But there's
But
flexibility
then there's
there.
flexibility there.
Right,
Right,
that's
you're not
right.
locking in.
Because-
They're not changing the structure. They're not coming in and tearing things out. It's like,
Right.
yes.
Right.
And so that one, obviously a $13 per square foot savings. For the other office, that would be an $8 per square foot savings. And to me, doing that would match your rhetoric.
Yep.
Because you've always said strategically so, which, by no coincidence towards things that you either want or don't want to happen. It's about the fiscal responsibility. Well, are we picking and choosing
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
when we want to be fiscally responsible?
And that's why it feels like there's some other type of agenda behind
Yes.
this move that doesn't have anything to do with raising funds for the library. There's something
Right.
else behind that. And we're just, we're waiting for the next thing that could come down the pipeline of what they're going to do to our public library.
That's the thing I struggle with. I want, on the one hand, I don't know people's motives. It's hard to know a person's motives. And so I don't want to make that judgment about the motives of Iwanuka and, how do you say his name? Iwanenko, and Persico and Davis. But the sort of clandestine way in which things are happening, in addition to what happened in Fairview, in addition to what happened at the library earlier with the LGBTQ stuff and the books, and it all sort of speaks of an agenda
Yes.
that's much bigger than this move by
Exactly.
Gannon.
Defunding minority-led
Right.
organizations.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when you look at them almost to an organization, to a person, there's no coincidence.
Well,
Plus,
yeah.
we want to reduce the amount of resources available to
Right.
people because what are we doing in Florida right now? We're limiting people's access to information
Yes.
because education is power.
Right.
And
Yes.
we don't want them to have that power.
Exactly.
And let me be clear about this because we're on public radio, right? And this is the voice of the public. This is an issue that is a public issue. I want to be clear about the fact that as a host, being on WQLN's network, we are commenting on patterns that have played out in real life in real time.
Yeah.
Yes.
That are documented in the newspaper. Chuck is absolutely right. I can't speak to someone's motive. Why did you do that? But like Krista said, it begs the question, well, what's going on here? Because on paper, it doesn't make any sense. This is the job of the public when
Yeah,
it comes
Right.
to
absolutely.
Yes,
protesting.
that's exactly it.
To hold government accountable and say,
Yeah.
well, what is that about? It doesn't add up.
It's our money. It's our property.
There's the
it's
point.
our library.
That's
It
right.
belongs to us. It
There's
is
the
funded
point.
through our local tax
There's the
dollars,
point.
our state tax
And Gannon
dollars.
doesn't pay taxes.
And they don't pay a single
They don't.
bit.
I was a part of a kind of a think tank or an ad hoc committee, and they talked about DEI within government jobs. The health department, I want to say, spearheaded this committee at the time. And when they came to me, they said, "Well, Marcus, what are your thoughts?" I said, "Listen, if you own a business, it's a bad look to have a homogenous staff, right? In 2023. I can argue it, but at the end of the day, it's your dime, although it's a bad look. When we're talking about taxpayer dollars, the jobs we're talking about in this meeting
Yep.
Right.
are all supplied by taxpayer dollar. You're taking taxes from the LGBTQIA community, from New Americans, from African Americans, from white folk, from black. It doesn't matter. And so you can't take money from everybody and do the will of one demographic.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right? And so when you talk about it's our money, Krista, that to me, it's really that simple. You
It's
can't
that
get
simple.
irritated when people are saying, what are you doing with our money?
Yeah.
You don't do your investors like that with shareholders.
Yeah.
You hold them on a pedestal as an investor. Shareholders, you guys are valuable to us. Okay, thank you. Aren't we shareholders?
We are
Yes,
shareholders.
we are.
Yes.
In this whole situation. And so the restructuring of county council, let's talk about that. What were your reactions when you saw that some things were starting to change on county
Well,
council after the elections?
We were tickled, and we
Yes.
really worked hard to let people know that some of the people that were on council said things like, well, whenever asked about the library specifically, Brian Shank said, well, they don't really need to know everything that we're doing. If we told them everything, we would never get anything done. Something to that effect. I don't know his words exactly, but that was. And Davis has also said those same words. And so we really tried to reach as many people as possible to let them know, is this the kind of person you want representing you? And so we think that that had something to do with the fact that he was defeated. And so we're really tickled that Chris Drexel and Rock Copeland, who wrote a wonderful piece about not in our library,
Yes.
and the reasons why it shouldn't be in our library. So we know that Scatella is also supportive, and he has said at the first meeting, he was very, it was good to hear somebody was on our side, and we
Yes.
know Andre's been on our side.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's 4, but there's 3 who continue to hold on to this belief that this is going to be a great program for the community and it's going to add to the library, is what they keep saying. And it's bringing in money. is one of the quotes that was in the article on Sunday's paper from Winarski.
Yeah.
And he's not going to change his vote. So we're kind of like, whoa, we need that one vote, because we think that if they do rescind, Brenton Davis will
Veto.
it. And so to
Of which you
override,
need the
right,
fifth
that's
vote.
why we need the
Exactly.
fifth. So people, if you're in those people's districts, wake up. It's like, we need you to start paying attention to what they're doing with our tax dollars, what they're doing with our library, what they're doing with our democracy, really.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so wake up and talk to them and tell them that you don't want them to allow a private organization to take space in our library, our public library.
Chuck, you think we're becoming, the establishment is becoming tone deaf at a bad time? I think about the one-on-one interview that I did with Rock Copeland and that you did with Susanna Faulkner, right? About the situation with county council and reappointing Mel Witherspoon and things along those lines. Jasmine Flores is now the president of city council. I know we're talking about county government, this overall conversation, but she's the president of city council, and I can't recall her age off the back of my...
She's like 30.
Couldn't be much more than that.
Yeah, very young,
Yeah.
Latinx sister, right?
Yeah.
And so you look at the makeup of city council, and you start to look at the work of groups like Erie County United, and then putting forth slates for elections, and they've been pretty successful.
Yeah.
Right? That coupled with the fact that the landscape of Erie is changing.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Right?
it
And you
is.
look at the number of people of color on the school board even. Things are changing. Are they choosing a bad time to be tone deaf? And have they found out a little bit from some of the election results
I think
that this is not the best course of action?
But it goes to the same thing that's happening in the larger culture right now with the MAGA movement. It is an attempt to hold on to what we've always had. And there's so many facets of that. There's a professor named, she actually passed away a couple years ago. Her name was Phyllis Tickle. And Phyllis was a wonderful human being who wrote about big changes in cultures. And she looked at Western society and at the church in particular. And she saw that every few hundred years, and she picked 500 as kind of the focal point, but every 500 years there were huge paradigm shifts happening in the church. And if you fall, not just in the church, because she started in 500 BC or so, and you can see these things happening. The time of the prophets in the Old Testament, the time of Jesus, and then a couple of church schisms along the way, and 500 and 1000 and 1500 was the Reformation. And she said, we're in another one. And it has to, what it does is it creates a kind of turmoil that people withdraw from, that people don't know what to do with, that people are afraid of. And that's happening culturally. And I don't think that they're choosing this time to be tone deaf. I think they're holding on to what they've had, to the old ways, to the old power structures, to their privilege. They're holding on to those things so tightly because they're afraid to lose those. And
Right.
that fear prevents them from hearing and listening.
I also think, though, the media is at fault, and the fact that people no longer read the newspaper, they no longer watch the news.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many people we run into every day that know nothing about this whole issue.
Yeah.
And so it tells you a lot. I mean, people are on their own little whatever, Facebook or whatever they're on, in their own little group, and whatever they get fed is what they know. And so I think that plays a huge role today, is
me
the
too.
misinformation and the lack of information that
But
people
and the scary thing, though, is they are making decisions. They're holding on to that privilege and what's comfortable, and making decisions that are going to impact generations coming down. My son, I'm so worried for his generation about all of the things that are going on. And that includes what's going on with our public library right now. Those things are going to fully impact them.
Right.
Yeah.
More than any of us sitting at this table right now. And I want to stand up and fight for those
Yes,
people
me
too.
too.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
On issue after issue, we want to do that. So one of the things I don't think they see, the tone deaf folks, is that by being tone deaf, by telling us to, speak to the hand or turning away from us, they are radicalizing young people. So we young people voted in numbers larger than ever before in the last presidential election. Young people are doing all kinds of, this is a wonderful city in so many ways because of the work of so many young people who are doing great things in this town. City council is now beginning to represent that. We have 4 people on that city council who are young. We have folks who are LGBTQ members. We have people of color. It's a great representation.
Right.
And we need to start really giving some ear to the younger folks.
And that goes back into my thought. I always say that when it comes to, you can look at the changes going on in Erie's demographics, and you can see that it's no longer your grandfather's Erie.
Yeah.
But when it comes to making decisions, it's still your
is.
grandfather's
It
Erie.
is, yes.
And I think about that. Chrissy, you said your son is a senior. My daughter's a senior, again, full disclosure, at Cathedral Prep. She went to Villa. My wife went to Gannon. And we talked about this at the house the other day. I'm thinking to myself, you sure you want to listen to the voice of the public? We've watched Villa close because your numbers started to wane, right? We've watched the rise of Mother Teresa Academy, which is majority minority, because you want to make inroads in the inner city. And they've actually tied that legacy to Cathedral Prep and Villas at the time. So you're in it. This is the same demographic that you are not paying attention to when it comes to how does this impact the inner city, the city period, taxpayers, things along those lines. It always strikes me when I see people ignoring the fact that Erie is changing.
Yeah.
Right.
And you say, I'll make this decision, and decision be damned. You sure you want to do that?
Yeah. Look at cities around the country who have embraced the fact that things change. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and when I was a kid, you couldn't go outside with a white T-shirt on and keep it white for very long because of the pollution from the mills. But Pittsburgh recognized when generationally things were changing, and they looked ahead and said, we got to adjust to this new future that's coming there. And Pittsburgh became a tech center. It's a clean city now. The city that was known for pollution has become a clean city.
I'm glad you brought up change.
And we're kind of seeing the need for that.
Okay,
all over the
because
world.
we have to be careful because Gannon's and Brenton Davis's argument in council is libraries need to change. And yes, they do, but they don't need to have a private institution come in and change it.
No, they do not.
They do not.
In
and
fact,
so, yes, go ahead, Krista.
Well, because I love her saying this, and the fact is what they're doing is they are thwarting future change.
Yeah.
They are robbing the public of the ability to change the library in the future. 25-year lease?
Yes.
Right?
No, that's going against change. We need
It's up to
make
the
sure-
library and to the voters and to the people of
Exactly.
Erie County to decide what that library is going to be.
Yeah.
Well, whether it's the Teen Center therapy dogs, the Idea Lab.
And they have changed a lot. They've
Exactly.
added some wonderful
And that's
programs.
what
and
Kathy
that's
makes.
yes,
Kathy
exactly.
Dahlkemper, the case she makes in her article is,
Yes.
but it's appropriate change for that particular institution
Right.
and this city.
Exactly.
This one is not.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And so the voices of the community, let's talk about the voices of the community, because you're doing petitions. You mentioned your son, what the reaction was. You also mentioned the fact that there were a lot of people. Social media is tricky because the algorithm gives you what
Yes.
you want to see more of, and if
Yeah.
you aren't checking for the library thing,
Right.
it's not going to keep putting it in front of you. Give us some of the feedback that you're getting from community, be it people that you've encountered in front of some of these protests, people that
Sure.
have written, emailed, called. Talk about some of those voices.
Sure. A lot of the people have actually commented on the change.org petition, and most of them are saying, we don't want our library to have Gannon University's program. It's a great program, but it belongs somewhere else. And they want to preserve the library and let it change, and they decide what's going to be changed in that library. So many of the people are definitely in agreement with us that they want it to stay public. And we when we started first protesting in front of Gannon, we didn't get a whole lot of people because they didn't know. But now, today, it was great. We had so many people beeping and putting their thumbs up and letting us know that they were with us. And then
Nice.
we did get yard signs, and so we have yard signs out that
Yes.
say, keep our library public, and with our change.org. And there's that little QR code, which I don't know how to use. I'm too old. But yeah, we have people stopping on the street because the QR code's right on the sign signing it right then and there.
Nice.
So yeah, so people really are embracing the fact that they want their library to stay public, and we're so happy that. And this is wonderful because we can reach more people. The more people we reach, the better, because they, as the group grows, as the numbers grow, they can't ignore us.
Right.
And they can't call us a small group. Of just a small group of people.
Yeah.
I think also some of the feedback that I have received, because I've raised a point with some people, that the library serves all people, but also very specifically an underserved group of people. It is a home base for them for recreation, for education, what have you. And I've seen them pushed out of a lot of other areas in the city with some of the changes that have happened. And the library is still there from them. And so I'm just very nervous, and other people have expressed this too, that this is another way to push those folks out.
Right.
As well. And where else are they supposed to go?
Right.
Because the library is a haven, for so many people.
Yeah, at a time when a lot of people are debating what to do about our homeless population in the downtown area as is, for multiple reasons. You're absolutely right. That just adds more to it.
Yeah, and when you go, you see a lot of immigrants and people of different cultures. And I know myself, one of the reasons I fight so hard is I was born in Italy and came after the Second World War. And my grandfather was here before us. And one of the first things when we finally got here, we saw fascism firsthand. In Italy, my grandmother's family was murdered by the Nazis. And so, yeah, it's just unbelievable. So my grandfather instilled in us you have to know what's going on. You must vote. But one of the things he did was take us to the Carnegie Library every week. We didn't have books at home, and a lot of people don't have books at home.
Books are expensive.
That's right. And the thing with the internet now, and they can go use the internet. They don't have broadband. They don't have computers at home. And so there's a lot of people that are, will be falling by the wayside. They won't be able to have those resources available to them. And that space that should be public should remain public so that we can put more programs to service people, not Gannon.
Right. Carnegie was a pioneer of
That's
libraries.
right.
Carnegie
it's
was
free.
the one that said
Free
it's
to the
free
public.
to the public. Free and public. He was
Yeah.
a pioneer. He said when he was little, if I ever came to a point in my life where I had enough money to do something great, I was going to make libraries and education and public spaces for the people. That is what Carnegie said. So we want to preserve. He saw way into the future and saw how a public library was going to serve the people in the community. We don't want to mess with a legacy that was started by somebody like Carnegie.
Right.
He was a Pittsburgh guy, so I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And he's a Pennsylvania guy.
Yeah. And
so
I
we're-
went to that library all the time.
Yeah, so we're looking at the long game. Chrissy, you said it correctly. What does this look like several generations down the line?
Exactly.
And that's how we should look at it. I've said on the radio before, as at the current time, I'm the board president of the King Center. And we renovated our event space. Now it's the MLK Event Center. It used to be the Green Room. And I remember when we were raising the money, we were very particular on where the money came from, because if we took it from the wrong entity, organization, or persons, what would it look like 20 years from now?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's a sense of ownership. I gave the money, and then the next generation comes along and it's the such and such room because we gave $200,000 X amount. Well, that wasn't the goal. And so we thought about generations down the line, this should be organic money. We came up with it. Point is, it was something that we thought about. I hear more of a political strategy, like you talked about yard signs and things along those lines. It's starting to sound like a political campaign. What's the contingency plan if there's no public meeting called? Is there a backup plan for you? Because it seems that that's not necessarily being planned on either side.
Well, we're really a loose group of people. We don't really have, quote, a leader, and so we just kind of go with what's going on. And we have an event coming up on January 31st at the Manacor Plaza. We're going to do protest songs and try to make it fun, something that hopefully the media will want to cover and keep it in the news, and talk about where we are and try to get the people that come to that to reach out to people they know. We've been talking, maybe we need to do civil disobedience. We don't know. It's like, because they don't seem to be budging. They seem to be digging in. They came up with a new sign of sorts, and it has Project Neptune at Blasco Library. So they added that to their signs. And so it looks like they're digging in. And so, it's like, it's overwhelming some days. It keeps me up at night.
Yeah,
and
It has kept me up at night as well. And it's just, I feel like they're going to change the heart of what is one of the most important assets to the citizens of Erie County.
Yeah, so we were begging Gannon to do the moral thing and to really help us out, because we don't think Brenton Davis is going to do the moral thing. And we hope that Gannon would do that, but we're not so sure. And so I don't know. We're trying to get national attention. We've been trying to, but if you don't know somebody in the national media, it makes it difficult to get your story out there. But this is a little different. I mean, they're attacking libraries all over the country.
Right.
You can find articles about how they're defunding and doing all the different things. This is a unique one where they're putting in a private institution into the library and practically giving it to them for free. And so it's a little different than what other communities are doing to destroy libraries, to make, I don't know why. Well, like you said, you don't provide education, and so you keep people stupid, and then you can do whatever you want. I don't know, but it's.
I mean, once Gannon would be in that space, what changes for the patrons of the library then? What changes for the people that go there? What things are they going to demand or require of the patrons in order to keep their private space sacred and free from whatever they deem not worthy
Well, first
of
and
their
foremost,
part?
it's going to be a research center, and research labs don't have people going in and walking through and doing whatever they want. And so, yes, they may do some education programs, but for the most part, it's supposed to be a lab, a research lab.
But what we're hearing from Gannon is, and I like the idea of the program. I, like you, Anna, am very concerned about environmental issues. But what I don't hear from Gannon is specifics. So here's how we're going to operate this place. Here are some of the educational things we're going to engage in.
And when.
Here are some, and when.
How often.
And here are some of the guardrails that I think County Council has maybe not done us any favors because there are no guardrails.
No.
How can we be able to say to Gannon a few years down the line, this ain't working? We're locking them in before the community has the opportunity to ask questions, to have input, and that's what kills democracy.
Yes.
And we need to not allow that to happen without asking Gannon to address our concerns.
Exactly.
And that's what Gannon needs to do. That's the moral aspect of it. Maybe we sit down in a meeting with Gannon people and they dispel every one of our fears and we get it all on paper. This is what they're going to do. And we all agree to that. I don't see that happening.
No, I don't either.
but you got to at least give us the chance to have that dialogue, and we're not having any dialogue right now. And that's what's happening all over the country. We're having things dictated to us.
Yes.
And that's a recipe for revolution.
Yeah.
And that was my next thought process. You and I discussed, Chuck, the direction that this country is going in with these upcoming national elections.
Yeah.
Right? And in many ways, we've seen plays from the national playbook from the last administration being played here in Erie County. Erie's going to be a player in this next federal election. Let's talk about the why a little bit. So, you ladies mentioned that the library is under attack all over the country. People ride by. I'm glad that people are starting to see more and more. There's a reason why the network that produces this is called the Public's Voice, right? There's a reason why the tagline is it's the X factor in public media. The Public's Voice always has been. Let's talk to the why. Give the listener a sense as to why it's important to even wage battles such as this when it comes to government decisions that may not work in the best favor of the everyday citizen.
It's important for us to wade into this, as you say, because if we let go of what we have locally, what belongs to us and has an impact on our everyday, we will see that kind of moral decline have a domino effect on things even bigger and greater. Again, I want to also speak to the generations that are coming up ahead of us. We want to make sure that we preserve the democracy as well as their ability to do what we're doing right now and standing up for what we believe, and be able to preserve that sanctity of democracy, a democratic protest, and being engaged as citizens.
We can see what happens when citizens don't become engaged. I mean, if you've been watching the Ken Burns program on the Holocaust and what was going on in the United States, boy, I'm learning a lot, because obviously that wasn't part of my history growing up. But I knew from Italy and what we went through there. But I'm just shocked at how people just gave up their ability to really think about what was going on, to protest. It's scary when you think about what has happened. And do people really want to give those rights up to protest and to demand that their democracy works for all the people and not just some of the people?
And a public library is the keystone of a free democratic
That's right.
society. A public library, your public schools, and the free press are the things that are needed for a democracy to thrive. It is the threshold. It is the pinnacle of what we need to preserve in order to make sure we live in a free, open society that has access given to all people.
And as we get ready to close, is there information that you want to give to the public in terms of how they can engage with you
Sure.
and your organization and with the group about this issue?
Sure. We don't really have an organization. It's a ragtag group, but
Those are the best ones.
yeah.
Because we are bonded by our
The thing
love
is,
of
I
the
have
library.
met so many wonderful people. Most of the people that we're working with, I had no idea who they were before.
Yes.
So we have a Facebook group called Keep Our Library Public that people can go to. We also have an online petition where there's lots of information, including the lease, so people can see and read the lease. And it is change.org/wrong-location. And so people can go there, and I try to do updates and put articles as they come up and different information that we learn. And so I try to keep that up to date. Same thing with the Facebook group page, is to keep that up. There's also another group called Project Minerva, who's been around, and we're actually a lot of the same people. And it's a private group, but they have been working hard to try to get people to use the library. They made these wonderful buttons that we have, Keep Our Library Public. And so we work together with them. And so, but that's a private group. You have to get invited. But I share everything on the Keep Our Library Public, so people can learn what's going on, see articles that come up as they come up, and we'll definitely point them to this broadcast so that people can listen to it.
Excellent. Well, Anna McCartney, Krista Perry, thank you so much for coming in today. Chuck, thank you for the co-host and just helping us with this issue. And hopefully, if you're listening, this is an issue that you pay closer attention to and you lend your voice to the dialogue, to the debate, and make your opinions heard, because the voice of the public is the X factor with issues such as this, and it should be taken into consideration. What an interview. But listen, don't turn the dial just yet. I know this is normally the time where I remind you that Next 2.0 streams on Fridays on all major podcast platforms and the fourth Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. on WQLN NPR, which is 91.3 FM. This is also usually the point where I thank my co-host Chuck Camerata and our guests for coming on the show. But I don't want to end it on that note today. I want to end it with you listening to the voices of everyday citizens, the public's voices, if you will, on this topic, as they're addressing county council and speaking from the heart. Regardless of where you fall when it comes to this particular issue, I think we can all agree that it is very, very important for people to stay engaged with things involving public officials, public money, public spaces, public places. And when the citizens are not involved, it encourages people in power to do what they want to do. That's the moral of the story. Devoid of who's sitting in what role in political office or what party is involved with what, this really comes down to the will and the voice of the people being honored at every turn. And this group is reminding the powers that be of that very thing. So on that note, bravo. But I don't want to steal their thunder. Here are those voices.
Abdullah Washington, City of Erie. I have the pleasure of being represented by Mr. Andre Horton. The founder and instigator of the public library system was none other than Benjamin Franklin. There's a lot of people in here who consider themselves patriots. Our public spaces and facilities are dear to us, especially here in Erie, where we have a poverty rate of 26% and a child poverty rate of 44%. So respectfully, I question why this was pushed to the front so rapidly before many of the experts in this room, Ms. Rennie, among them, could be consulted and worked with to develop a plan that's feasible, that works for everybody and doesn't take away one of our valuable community assets. Anybody in here who's ever used a public toll road, on a highway system, once the government makes a decision, that's here. We can't expect these things to go back or change a stroke of a pen. This is a permanent decision that you guys are making. You're talking about 10 and 25 years. We can't expect to just rip up the library system or punish the library system or constantly assault how our library system works and think that things are going to go back to normal, or that we can change it. This is a permanent decision, and we need to all stand up for what's right and for the people of this city. And respectfully, Mr. Shanks, your years of the experience in the penal system don't qualify you as a financial or educational expert, certainly not with the library system. And Big Daddy's plans for this city, including his request, apparently for the largest tax increase of comparable people in the position that he now holds, it kind of shows us what his planning for the future can do for our area. So respectfully, please leave our library alone. Let them do their jobs. The people, and certainly the poor children, 44% of our children need to have their spaces respected. Our communities need to be shown the respect they deserve. Respectfully, no. Please table this, get rid of it, come back to reality, and actually help the people of Erie do something that's productive. Find a way to make this work that doesn't involve reducing things that are here to help our children.
My name is Kitty Harrington. I'm from Southeast Mill Creek. I'm sorry, I don't know the district number. I was a children's librarian for over 37 years. First at the Perry Square Library. How many of you remember that? And then at Glasgow. Now, when I got down to Glasgow, all those years ago, it was hard for me to get acclimated. Everybody said it's such a beautiful spot. What a city to offer space like this to the library. I mean, it was just unheard of. They tried to put us in the old Sears building. They did a bunch of other things. And then we got to Glasgow and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm disloyal, this beautiful spot. Well, now, over the years, I've come to really appreciate it because I've seen the effect that beautiful building in that location, and more importantly, the library services that are offered from within that building. And library services, like anything else, transition. You're talking about 25 years that you have offered space, which can probably only grow. Will this program always be there for that space, for Gannon? Of course Gannon is going to be using it as a draw to get more students. It's a beautiful spot. You bring people down through there, they're going to go, whoa, this is pretty cool. But anyway, library services transition. Do you know that we're going to need less space back then? I mean, 25 years from now, even 5 or 6 years. That building has transitioned so many times. We need a library that can adjust to the delivery of services to the people in the community. It's so important. Over 35 years, over 37 actually, to a Reader's Advisor. I have seen what libraries can mean to the people of Erie. from the old days of the Boys Club coming down to the library, to coming down to Blasco, to the people that used to come down after school. We still have those people, and we need the space to adjust to what the library needs to be in the future. We have a beautiful, beautiful building, and we have space to offer for all kinds of services as library service grows. It's free, rich, poor, black, white, immigrant, homegrown. We need the space. How do we know what's going to happen in the world? We need that space to stay where it is. Gannon is a fine institution, but they have other options. We don't need the free library building that was built to be that, to be given to a nonprofit organization. And I would like to ask you to please table it tonight. Just table it. Get some more information. See what other options are out there. Find out what library service really means now and in the future. And then have the forethought or to see what it can be. And then you will be responsible for having left that be so that it'll be available for your children and maybe your grandchildren.
Yes, Brian Graff, District 2, I guess Lincoln Avenue. I'll just go with that. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. The council is set to vote tonight on approving a lease between the County of Erie and Gannon University for the Gannon Great Lakes Water Research Center at Blasco Library. I applaud Gannon University for the proposed research and outreach that this research center will perform. The research in particular on microplastics and its impact on the local ecosystem is really important and urgent, and I look forward to seeing this center come to fruition. However, the rush to make a decision to award this lease tonight is a problem. The public has not been sufficiently briefed on this proposed lease. Yes, the county council and the Friends of the Library got a tour and were briefed, but that's not the same as the general public. How can we have comments over something neither the council nor the county executive have briefed us on? Yet the public's only going to have one chance to provide comments, and that is tonight. For myself, I have these questions for the county executive and the council. 1, what will be the impacts on services that are provided by Blasco Library? What portions of the community will be most affected by this change, and what will the impact be on our most vulnerable populations? 2, what will be the impacts on the staff at Blasco Library? 3, what physical changes will have to occur at Blasco Library? How long will it take, and how much will it cost? 4, is a 25-year lease appropriate? 5, can the county get out of the lease after 10 years, just like Gannon University? 6, is the $22,956 annual lease to Gannon University fixed, i.e. it does not change for 25 years? 7, what would be the impact of this lease on Blasco's designation as a district library center? Is it possible that Blasco could lose this designation and thus state funding? 8, will the library's 5-year plan that returned to the state to be designated as a district library center need to be redone to reflect changes brought about in services? 9, parking is a problem now. What is the anticipated impact on parking if the center is located at Blasco Library? What are your plans to deal with that? So my questions are that of a layman. There are definitely more questions that need to be answered, but they must be asked and answered more formally by people more qualified than I. One of the council board members has been quoted as saying that this resolution is not really appropriate for a public hearing. And respectfully, I disagree. This is a big deal. This decision is going to impact us for at least 25 years. If Blasco loses 3,000 square feet, it is space gone, unavailable for the library for potentially 25 years. This is exactly the type of issue that the public needs a public hearing on, since the library touches so many of your constituents all across the county in so many ways. This Blasco Library is truly a county gem that serves a wide constituency. The quality of the staff and the facility are top notch, and I'm amazed every time I walk into this library and see all the different ways it serves the community. To approve this lease tonight without a public briefing and more public input is not right. All I know is that the council needs to take some time to get more public input and to answer a lot more questions, and I urge you to vote against approving this lease tonight. Thank you.